So hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with me, Stephen. Tiffany is away on leave, so it's just me flying solo this week. But it's a topic that I think resonates with all of us. Today we're talking about something that I would like to say is uniquely Singaporean. Singlish. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world. I've been in Europe, in Paris, and suddenly you hear someone say, "Hey, like that how ah?" And immediately I know they are Singaporean. That's just something about Singlish that feels instantly familiar, and it turns out that many Singaporeans feel the same way too. A recent study by the Institute of Policy Studies found that more people now see Singlish as an important part of our national identity and something that is worth preserving. Interestingly, the study also found that more people are using Singlish at work, and younger Singaporeans are also more comfortable embracing it openly. So then we ask, is the Singlish we speak today the same as the Singlish that, my grandparents used when they were around, and with the rise of Gen Z slang, social media language, and corporate buzzwords, is Singlish evolving to something completely different? Or is it simply a language that is, doing what's always done, but just moving ahead, evolving and changing with the times? So with me today, I have Dr. Melvin from the Institute of Policy Studies. He's one of the co-authors of the study.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Associate Professor Ying from the Linguistics and Multilingual Studies at NTU.
Hi.
Welcome, guys. Maybe I'll start with you, Ying, because
yep.
the survey, when it came around, were you surprised by any of the findings?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and
You
no.
say yes lah, no lah.
Yes and no. So the no part is just simply because it's a given, right?
Okay.
People are using a lot more Singlish. Singlish is more widely accepted. That's something that we've expected over the years, especially young people, just a little bit more open and liberal about saying, hey, I speak Singlish and it's perfectly okay. So that part I'm not too surprised. What I'm surprised by was the authors, the researchers on the study, having a very optimistic outlook to say that, Singlish is going to survive and Singlish is going to coexist with the other languages and it's not going to pretty much, I suppose,
Be eradicated.
Yeah. Which, that part I take a step back.
Why are you surprised by the optimism?
Because language changes.
Okay.
And Singlish has changed over the years. Even without government intervention, we are looking at Singlish pretty much changing from decade to decade. The kind of Singlish that our grandparents spoke, or even when Singlish first started back in the 1920s, 1930s, is a very different creature from what we are speaking today. And so if we take an evolutionary perspective of how Singlish will change and has changed over time, give it another 20, 30 years, Singlish is a completely different thing.
But it'll still be Singlish, just
Well, that's the thing, right?
an evolved Singlish, that's all.
An evolved Singlish, but what form of Singlish? And my prediction, if I'm still alive by then, the Singlish that we think is Singlish is probably going to be very, very similar to English. And by that time, it's actually completely meaningless to even call it Singlish. Just call it English.
Okay. So Melvin, how do you respond to that? You guys were optimistic that Singlish will last.
I guess we have to be optimistic, right? Do we have to, I guess it's always trying to end, on an optimistic note. Also, this is self, kind of self-assessment of your own proficiency. So we asked about English, we asked about Singlish, and you see that trending upline in terms of, in 2013, people thought that, they were, say, this proficient in Singlish, and that, slowly trended upwards to 2024. So I guess, if you extrapolate that, it kind of tells us, okay, it is, probable that as we continue onwards, 5 years down the road, we might see, even more people stating that, they are proficient or very proficient in Singlish. But I do take your point also that, like, what is Singlish itself? And that part, I do agree to that tends to change. Unfortunately, the survey itself probably can't really tell us because, it's a survey instrument. It doesn't state, okay, what's your understanding of Singlish, what comprises Singlish, or how do you use it, and certainly that will change according to the environment, how it continues to morph even from the environment around us, the videos, the kinds of social media that you use, abbreviations that you see using now alongside Singlish, and that will certainly have an impact on Singlish itself.
But one would say that such changes are expected because language is living. It will evolve, it will change, it will adapt to whatever is happening in the real world at the time, right? So when you say Singlish will be pretty much very different, as in,
Very
will we
different.
not be saying okay lah, or no, the lay and the la will all be gone, or I mean,
Oh, well, okay. So if we take a kind of a linguistic structural perspective, right? In that there are going to be features that have been fossilized. And the fossilization took place over the last maybe 50, 60, 100 years. And features that lasted will probably continue to exist, except that there are going to be many features that are going to be dropped off simply
Okay.
because they are not structurally strong enough to stay in the language.
can you give me an example of something?
So, say 20 years ago, you would have heard terms like something. Maybe something.
Like
Oh,
something.
that guy,
Okay.
very something.
Oh,
Why do you
okay,
walk
okay,
in such
okay.
a something manner?
Yeah.
Right? That's gone.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And people don't understand it anymore. Young people these days don't use that term. I use it in my classroom and they were like, oh my God, you're showing your vintage. And there are terms that young people are using these
Yeah.
days that I cannot understand. Right?
Okay.
And so there are features that are going to be put in and dropped out over time. So fossilized features will remain, but there are not going to be that many 50 years down the road,
Okay.
unfortunately. Yeah. Because the language context situation doesn't allow for it.
Is it also because, I mean, Singlish actually is really an evolution of all the different languages, Malay, your Hokkien, your different words that have come into the language and we use,
Not just words, but grammatical structures as well.
Okay. As in, you're saying Singlish has grammar as well, right?
Of
Yeah.
course.
I know. No. To our foreign friends who are listening, they may
Yeah.
not fully appreciate
Yeah,
that, as in why I can't use la or lay,
Oh, yeah,
at
you
different
can't.
points in time. But also, have the connotations changed? I mean, was Singlish seen as a more colloquial, that groups from the lower educated, groups would use it? And I guess that has changed too?
Yes, for sure. I think attitudes have changed, primarily because in the past, people didn't know any better, right? The term was coined in the 1970s and people were talking about it as if it was bad English. But it also coincided with the time where the education system was changing. People were very much focused on, let's do good English.
Yep.
And the university professors themselves were unsure about what to do with Singlish. So research was coming up and they couldn't grapple with this creature. So over time, people decided that, maybe it's just a form of bad English. But we know better over the years that structurally there is a system, there are things that are in place, we can study this, and it's a very systematic process.
Right.
Yeah. And now we are looking at people, young people especially, coming forward and say, hey, I speak Singlish and it's perfectly okay, because there's a recognition that is different from English.
Yeah, so in a
Yeah.
way, it's kind of cut across all groups,
Yeah.
and it's something we're all familiar with.
Yeah.
And it can even be formalized, right? I guess in a way, I don't feel bad speaking to my boss using Singlish. Of course, depending on the environment, if they're local, I can say,
Yeah.
boss, I don't think we should be so capo about this issue,
Yeah.
Have you found, Melvin, that in from the survey and the people, that you all surveyed, that there was this, it's a comfort language as well?
Right. I think in general, I think Singapore residents, I think our views on Singlish have tended to become more discerning, or a little more moderate. Like it's not English good, Singlish bad.
Yeah.
That seem to have characterized the operating environment, perhaps in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the Speak Good English movement. Now the discernment comes from perhaps the acceptance findings that we have. So for instance, we asked respondents, to what extent do you think it's acceptable to use English across a variety of situations? So for instance, with your friends, with your family, more informal settings, and of course you have more formal settings. What do you think if a politician gives a speech in Singlish,
Right.
or perhaps in the workplace, right? Communicating with your colleagues versus your boss and all that, and you do see that gradient, right? Like people are starting to become a little more discerning at realizing that perhaps there's the need to code switch, right? They
Right.
accept that, it's okay to, use Singlish in more informal settings, and perhaps that also comes with some idea that, when you communicate with someone in Singlish, you're expressing some form of comfort with that person, that perhaps, something, similar that, you can, bond or, bond over, as compared to, say, in a more formal setting when you are using, standard English. The differences in, perceived acceptance, or, whether it is acceptable for people to use English and English, it differs across. And that difference has gone up a little bit across the years also. And also in terms of the comfort levels, when using Singlish in society as a whole also.
Will we ever come to a point where Singlish is this sort of secret language we have in Singapore, where we can speak it in front of others because we know that they don't really understand what we're saying, and how would that be perceived?
I think we are really at a nice point now through the evolution of Singlish. If I have to characterize the life cycle, this is adulthood, maturity, right? And very often we can see people conversing in Singlish, and that people who are not proficient in Singlish cannot understand it, and it's perfectly fine. It's really like a play language. The language is created because people come together, communities come together in Singapore, and then we put things in and we create this. Whether we want it or not, we just subconsciously do it, right? It's part of a process of language evolution. So we do that. And that process actually allows us to use this to our advantage. We play with it. We have fun with it. Yeah, and we strike rapport.
But it's never going to be a formal language, so to speak.
I think at some level it's already been semi-formalized to some extent.
Words in the dictionary.
Words in the
dictionary. Does that legitimize it and say...
Of course it does, to a great extent, right? We call this a process of codification. And with any kind of authority that gives it a say and say, okay, this word is okay, it's in the Oxford English Dictionary. Oh yeah, that's like a big stamp of legitimacy. Whether we agree, whether or not we agree that those words should enter the dictionary, that's a whole different story. But at least there's some recognition that something's there. And then we have all our underground warriors who are putting up Singlish dictionaries. All of that. I mean, all of these give Singlish some reputation, right? That, it's okay. It's ours.
Is it about using it in the right place and time too? I mean, how much of this will depend on the hierarchy, the context of the situation, the environment you're in,
I think from the policy standpoint, I think what struck us also was that over the years, we have come from a, place where the government was quite vehemently against, right, the use of Singlish, speaking proper English and all. And over the years, we have seen somewhat of a, greater acceptance of it, even from the policy standpoint. One thing that comes to mind was during, the COVID period, they had Phua Chu Kang, come in, and deliver a whole message, in Singlish. It's one example of how the government realizes that, perhaps, when you articulate or communicate in English, your policies and all versus Singlish, you might be hitting different audiences. The endpoint could be that the objective of reaching to people who might, feel a little more engaged with, for instance, with English or Singlish, you need to have both. And as the years pass and all, you also realize that Singlish, more and more, it's also becoming a form of how people look at that and go, oh, okay, that's part of our Singaporean identity. I think we had another parallel study with CNA also on national identity, and Singlish was effectively the number one, most identified keyword when we ask Singaporeans, okay, what comes to mind, right? When you think about the Singapore identity, and that's one example of that.
Will it ever evolve to the point where it loses its essence? Does it also mean if we lose some of that, we're losing some of our cultural identity as well?
Of course. I think with every language that falls out of use, we are losing something in the process, right? We are losing the connection with people who speak those languages, and we are losing cultural sense, the sensibility about what it means to be able to speak those languages. Linguists talk about this all the time, that a language opens up a worldview, and it's a very different worldview. So if you have 5 languages that you speak, you have 5 different worldviews. So you lose one, that's it. that worldview is gone.
But are we losing? In a way, nobody speaks exclusively Singlish.
No, that's
right?
the
So,
thing.
Yeah, not like
right?
Cantonese or
Exactly. So I think with Singlish, it's a slightly different animal. Primarily also because it's a contact language that was organically created out of the communities of speakers that we have in Singapore. And I think with that comes a whole different set of expectations that when it evolves and it changes, we are changing it along the way. So are we going to be losing our Singaporean identity? I don't think so. More like we are changing or using the language updating it, having a slightly different version of it.
What if we use Gen Z language? For example, Auntie says, "Don't be so kepo lah," and the Gen Z replies, "Okay, Auntie, low key, my bad." I mean,
yeah.
Is that still Singlish? I don't know.
It's a very good question because, again, right, it is an input from speakers who speak it. So I think we should be able to accept that. It's just that it might not stay. It will change. Fads change. Trends change.
Right. So low key may not stay.
It may not stay.
The term, some people may argue that, well, I mean, in a way, okay, so I don't speak Hokkien anymore, but I didn't really lose that much.
It's true. So, okay, I'm with the view that languages are living. And with all living things, right, you live, you die. So if a language lives and dies a natural death, it's fine.
Okay.
Let it be. Okay. What I don't agree with is when a language is being murdered. So there are interventions where a murder has taken place and then a language was forcibly made to die because of that intervention. That's where I step back and say, hey, something needs to be done. So Singlish, with the Speak Good English movement, especially the early parts of the Speak Good English movement.
It was attempted murder.
I think it was attempted murder that didn't succeed very well, right? So it's a murder gone wrong. And then they decided, forget it, it's not worth killing, And over time, it may die a natural death, and if so, it's okay. Let it die.
Yeah, but we don't think about it that way. I don't think about murdering a language. But now that you mention it, I guess it was a bit intentional to remove dialects from our society, and it has done that,
Yes. So certainly from the survey that, heritage languages, we asked about heritage languages, Hokkien, Teochew and all that, that there is certainly, some form of unnatural death, going on. You do see that, huge difference across, say, older folk, saying that they are more proficient in the use of heritage languages. If you just look at 18 to 35 years old, respondents, it's very clear that, that see change in terms of how they perceive their own number one, frequency of use of language, and number two, the proficiency in terms of these heritage languages. That difference has come about as a result of that policy change, and that's something that I don't think you can just step back and say, okay, this came organically. It really has to do with the policy environment. Although that being said, I think Singlish is interesting insofar that despite attempts to try to at the start get people to let's stick to proper English, right? Singlish is improper and all, but at the end of the day, if something's organic and something's living, breathing, it's pretty tough to kind of kill it, especially with different iterations, different ways that people use it, both in informal or even formal settings.
And actually, that's a good testament to that Singlish is something that we want, because despite the attempted murder, so to speak, it still survived. Okay, so should we do more? Do we need to officially recognize this like our heritage culture? Do we need to say, yes, this is one of our intangible cultures? Will there be any upside to that? Or does it make a difference?
I don't think so. I think just let it be.
Okay.
If a language is going to survive, it will survive, and people will make it survive. I think the more you try to make it something, the more it's like making a tombstone for it.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like, preparing it, right?
Okay.
Preparing.
So just leave it alone.
Just
Singlish
leave it alone. Yeah. It will grow. It will die. Whatever.
So just tell them, don't like that lah. Just leave it be.
Let it be. Let it be.
Moving forward, how should people look at Singlish?
Singlish is clearly now, seen as, kind of like a pillar of identity, right? Beyond Singlish, people look at it also as a marker of, whether you are Singaporean or not. I think moving forward, there is also that need to kind of try to disentangle, implications of that, right? Like if we look at Singlish as, okay, this is what it means to be Singaporean, you should, to some extent, learn or, be able to, articulate, in Singlish and all. That has implications on people who might not speak, Singlish as well, or perhaps might not understand. So, I mean, in a very open society, immigrant flows and all that, there's increasingly, that idea that, well, if new citizens, immigrants come in, and what if they are not as proficient in Singlish? Then, what do we then think about them? Are they not as Singaporean as us? And I think the implications there are, well, it's pretty strong, and it's probably something that we also have to look at in tandem with English and also our mother tongues as a whole, right? Language is, my work has to do with whatever makes people fight, right? Race, religion, immigrant, integration, and all that. Of course, language is typically not what people will fight over, but it's always somewhat in parallel, right? I think in Singapore, race and language is always kind of seen, it's conflated, right, because of our CMIO model and all that. There's no escaping the use of language, and English always serves as that a common frame in which people can communicate across communities. And Singlish in the meantime seems to have come up to a point that despite efforts to, well, are we sure we really want this or use this a variant of English in our backyard, it's quite clear that people are well the answer is probably yes, right now, given the the trending above, and that potentially can be used as a kind of like a way to continue to integrate people. But I do agree, like the moment you try to institutionalize something, to formalize anything, it kind of defeats the purpose of these informal.
So we shouldn't have a Singlish immersion program.
Oh God, no.
I can't imagine what a class like that would be.
I think acceptance is good, recognition is good. I like the way things are going now with young people, as what the study has shown, right? Young people coming out and say, oh yeah, I can speak it. I think what we need to now seriously think about is what exactly is Singlish. When you speak something, are you speaking Singlish? If I put a la at the end of a sentence, of an English sentence, does that make that Singlish?
Right.
So I think over time we need to have a little bit more sensitivity to what we're actually doing.
Okay.
Yeah. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm really proficient in it," right? What do you mean? How much proficiency do we need to get there? And I think once we get that sorted out, we can begin to see what we can use Singlish for. We're already seeing a lot of uses for Singlish, but I think just over time, that will really allow us to mature as a society and also to sort of look at Singlish in a different light.
Okay, because it is an extremely efficient language, right? We can say so much with so few words. Anyhow, folks, I mean, we all love this language. We use it so much in our daily lives. If you have any thoughts of it, how have you seen Singlish evolving, and do you think it's going to be around to stay? Share your thoughts, your comments with us. We do love to hear from you. But otherwise, that's it for this week's episode of Deep Dive. See you next week. Bye.